I've spent more than $300 million on Google Ads and Meta Ads, and in this video I'm going to tell you what matters, what doesn't matter, and what specifically works in 2026. Until I would say early 2025, all our digital media strategy, online marketing strategy would start with audiences. For example, in our case, when we used to run campaigns to sell our courses, we would start with who is our audience? Okay, it's 21 to 35-year-old who are in market for online education, who had just completed their university and interested in digital marketing, Meta Ads, Google Ads, and this would be our audience. And everything would start from this point. And then we would say, okay, this audience, where do they go to? Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. So that will be our channel. And then we will decide on our creatives accordingly on this broader crowd. And then reporting, bidding, etc. And that would be our digital media strategy. But today, with AI-backed algorithms and these strong ad platform algorithms, that is a weak point to start with. Actually, in 2026, these ad platforms just need one input, one thing from you, which is the buying moment. And we call it situation. Basically, a situation tells you why someone would care about your brand, product, and service right now. For example, when we do our ad campaigns now in 2026, we don't care about audiences. We combine situations. For example, someone in India who just finished their college and they realize that it's not enough to get them a job. Someone running ad campaigns for their business or for their client and don't understand why the campaigns are failing. Someone who watched 20 tutorials on YouTube and still cannot figure out how to structure their campaign. Someone who tried to learn digital marketing, Google Ads, Meta Ads online and are so overwhelmed and lack structure. These are the situations. That's where you start your digital media strategy because they answer two important questions. Why the person who's looking at your ad should care and how ready are they to buy your product or service. And that is where all good and working strategies in 2026 start. This is the first thing you have to figure out for your business. Because when your strategy starts with situations, your message becomes sharper, your offer becomes clear, and your creative tells the ad platform who to target. In short, what I'm trying to say is the audience model has changed how you start your strategy with. The second one is don't copy your competitor ads. In all my courses and lessons and previous videos, I always mention that Facebook Ad Library, Google Transparency Center, Ad Transparency Center are very useful tools. But I see a lot of people making mistakes directly going there, checking the competitors, seeing their ads and just replicating in their ad account. And that's not the right approach because you can have an exact competitor having the same offer or product as you and their best performing ad might not make sense for you because you don't understand their full system at the background. You don't know their funnel, you don't know their audience journey, you don't know their pricing, you don't know their sales process, you don't know if the ad is driving revenue or just engagement. Let me give you an example. Look at this creative which has been live for last 1 month and it's generating most of the sales and the ROAS is around 8. And sometimes this is the only creative we have live, an offer creative. And some of the competitors can come to our ad library and like, okay, this has been working for them, let me copy. But it won't make sense to them because we only target this to people who watched our YouTube videos, came to our website, added to the cart and did not buy. And this creative makes absolute sense for them because these people already know us. They try to add it to the cart. They know what the offering is. And if you are a business, let's say you don't have as much YouTube presence, people don't know about you yet, this creative won't mean anything. Look at this another creative. Again, this is the best performing in the last 1 year. Nothing comes even close to it. And some of the competitors might come and say, this has been live for 1 month. Let's replicate this. But it won't make sense for them because we target it only to our engaged audiences. These people know us from YouTube. And when they see that we have such an offer, most of them are interested in this. But for a new business, it won't even make sense even if you're offering 50 courses. So what I'm trying to explain is when you go to ad library of your competitors, first try to understand what their creative is and try to figure out what probably their funnel is. Try to understand their customer journey. Okay, which creative do they first show to the audience and how do they basically move them towards sales? And use these ad libraries to understand what hooks they are using, what angles they are using. And once you put it together with the customer journey you think they have, then start drafting your ideas from there and do not just copy paste their ads. Okay, this one is a bit controversial, but in my experience, viral creatives in most of the cases, if not all the cases, are not the revenue generating creatives. They're two different things. Viral creatives gets people to react. But revenue creatives are something that makes people to act. Viral creative hooks and angles, they're important, but they have a place in the strategy. However, I see a lot of new marketers sweating about viral creatives. All their focus and attention is to come up with and develop potential viral creatives. And in some cases, you might even not need them based on your funnel. See, I understand. A funny hook can get shares, a controversial angle can get comments, a relatable ad can get saves, but none of that means the creative is attracting people with buying intent. In most of the cases, viral creatives attract users who are not even your potential buyers. And in a lot of cases, viral creatives can backfire in Meta. I have seen recently, there was a creative in our client's account which generated a lot of engagement. And what we saw is because Meta thought, okay, this is a very engaging creative, it allocated most of the budgets there. And our client had spent 13,000 euros on a viral creative which generated no leads. Because if revenue is the goal, your creative has to do much, much more than just getting attention. Because the creative is the component that qualifies the buyer, communicates the offer, handles the doubt, and makes them to act, and not just attention. Now, if your strategy allows, for example, one of the component or objectives is to create brand recall or ad recall, okay, one of the components has to be this viral creative, but do not focus all of your strategy to come up with viral creatives. This leads us to our next point, which is offer is the most important part in creative and overall digital media strategy in 2026. See, as a business, you offer something. You offer a product that does something for the clients, or you offer a service that does something for the client. But if the offer that you engineer and communicate in your creatives is not good, nothing will work for you. That's why the first point I mentioned is start your strategy with situations, because when you start there, getting an offer becomes easier, and the offer you come up with is very, very personalized with your audience. See, the good offer has 3 rules. The first one, you should be able to explain it in one line. The second one, it needs to have an outcome or core promise that the audience cares about. The third one, and the most important thing, is when you create your offer, when the audience looks at it, they shouldn't think, do I want this? They should think, will it work for me? And once you use these 3 rules, you will obviously come up with multiple offers. Okay, shall I say this? Shall I say that? When you're choosing an offer, you need to consider your audience. For example, if your offer is about price guarantee or discounts, it won't matter if you're selling to the rich, because that's not their priority. Their priority is probably what will save me time, what will save me hassle, what is easy. So similarly, if you're selling to poor, focus on the price and discounts. Selling to desperates, focus on outcomes, dream outcomes, hopes. Our next point is creative is the new targeting. I know it sounds like a cliche, but this is very, very important in 2026. What you have to understand is your creative is not just the message anymore. It is the part of the targeting, actually most of the targeting. Your creative now tells the platforms that what to target. I'll explain why. Now, a natural question from the situations point would be, okay, we have these situations for someone this age having this particular problem. How do we target these niche audiences? And the answer is the creative. You have to mention these situations in your creative components. The hook, the primary text, the text on the image, the first 3 seconds of the video, the offer, the CTA, the problem you mention, the words you choose, and all of this will tell now platforms about your situations, and they will accordingly find exactly these people. That's how creative is the targeting. Let me give you 2 simple examples. Now, for one of our clients who sell Italian courses, we use 2 different primary texts. One focused on, do you want to retire in Italy? And then, okay, we have a course for Italian courses and all, blah, 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 blah. But then we have one more creative where we are focusing on, do you want to study in Italy? And then, do you want to learn Italian and all? And what we saw is the first one gets leads from older people. And that's how this targeting works. Now, for example, there's a CRM, okay? Let's say it's specialized for real estate and it's specialized for lawyers. When you mention that, okay, a specialized CRM for lawyers in your creative, in your primary text or somewhere, the platform actually shows it to potential lawyers. So even the words you choose in your creative actually tell the platform who to target. So basically what you have to understand is when you build the creative, your video, your static, your primary text, everything, and just read it, and like you decide by looking at the creative that who it is for, that's what exactly the platforms nowadays do. more specifically Meta. This leads us to our next point, which is online marketing is a system and not just a combination of tactics and tools. What I mean by that is I meet a lot of junior marketers and even in certain cases clients in events and meetings, etc. And a lot of people ask me, oh, I'm working on this particular brand. What do you think? What is the best platform for me? Google or Meta? What kind of campaign structure? What kind of creative, or I don't know what. And usually they expect a magic answer. Oh, you should have this campaign structure, use Meta 70%, 30% Google, and say this in your creative. And that's not how it works. Successful online advertising is a system. It is scientific as well as creative at the same time. There are a lot of things that need to fall in place. The unit economics need to make sense. The offer needs to be strong. The creative needs to match the situation. The landing page needs to continue the promise. The tracking needs to be clean. The sales process needs to convert. The optimization and the growth system needs to be super clear and well-defined, rule-based. If one of the major parts is broken, the campaigns are going to struggle. And what kind of system will work for you is not a one-day answer. It sometimes takes us 3 months for a new client to understand what combination of creative, campaign structure, optimization, and other things work for this particular client. And by the way, that's why we created our DWI program, which is Done With You. It's a program where we basically provide strategic guidance where the clients do the work, but we just provide them strategic guidance, ideally for 3 months to help them come up with this particular system. If you want to know more about this program, I'll put the link somewhere in the description below. The biggest problem in this is all the people I have seen who are hopping for different kind of tactics or finding a particular tool, AI tool that will help them solve all their problems. They just keep restarting. They just keep running in loops. 1 month on Meta, one on Google, one on AI creatives, and then they repeat the process. And their goalpost keeps moving and real system never gets defined. Which leads us to our next point, which is AI amplifies you and your strategy. It cannot replace it. See, AI tools are very powerful. They can help you research faster, add more variations, analyze data, create landing page drafts, summarize reviews, and speed up your reporting. But AI cannot save a bad strategy. How I look at AI tools as of July 2026 is they just make you faster. They just help you do things faster, but they cannot replace your strategy. If your offer is weak, AI will just create more variations of a weak offer. If your positioning is unclear, AI will just make it more confusing. If your tracking is broken, AI will analyze your broken data faster. Understand one thing, a bad marketer cannot become a good marketer just because of AI tools, but they can make you faster. So if I have to sum it up, AI can make good marketers faster, but it can make bad marketers more dangerous. This leads to our next point, which is when you start on online advertising for your brand, you need to be ready to lose 2 months worth of ad spend without expecting any results. What I mean by this, if you or your client is not ready to lose this 2 months worth of ad spend just to get the proper working strategy for your brand, then you are probably gambling and you probably will never know what is a working strategy for you. I call it finding the right strategy phase. And no matter how much experience you have, you can never guarantee that the initial strategy you create for a brand is going to work. And to stress test any campaign, any tactic, any creative combination, you at least need 5 to 10 conversions worth of budget daily, and you need to at least have 50 to 100 conversions to just understand whether it worked or it didn't. This leads us to our next point, which is never, ever test everything at once. I see a lot of people who test a lot of things parallelly. New audiences, new creative, new offer, new landing page, new budget, new bidding strategy, and then they ask what worked. And the answer in almost all cases is we don't know. Because once you test multiple parameters at once, if the performance improves, you will never know what made it. If the performance becomes worse, you will never know what caused it. And this way, every week you will have a new learning, new theory, and new explanation, but you will never know what works and what doesn't. It might sound nerdy, but over the 14 years, I have learned this about testing. Whenever you're planning a test, change one major variable at a time and keep rest stable. And most importantly, document your tests and test results. What was the hypothesis? What did you change? What stayed the same? What metric decided the result? What did you learn? Because if you don't document all of this in a proper way and you just try to remember, trust me, after a month or two, all of this gets mixed up and then you start running in loops. You go back, oh, probably I think I remember this particular type of creative or this campaign structure worked if it's not documented. Trust me, it's so important. It sounds nerdy, but it's very, very important. This leads us to our next point, which is over-optimization kills innovation. I see a lot of people who over-optimize. They go to every keyword level. Oh, this keyword CPL is this much. This creative has equal CPL, but the CTR is a bit less. If we move it there, the CTR overall percentage will increase this. That means this traffic. That means these number of leads improvement and overall performance improvement of CPL by 16%, 9%, 3.8%. Because it sounds exciting. Once you identify a winner, let's say a targeting strategy, campaign structure, or a creative, you try to maximize and squeeze most efficiency out of that. And then you double down on same audience, same offer, same creative, same angle, and they keep making small improvements, but then you lose the chance to get your next breakthrough. And that's how campaigns become fragile. Because at one point, the creative gets tired, the audience saturates, and competitors copy the angles, and the platform changes, and suddenly the winning campaign stops winning. I've seen it a lot. So yes, optimize your winners, but don't spend all of your time polishing yesterday's best ad. Keep testing new hooks, new angles, new offers, and even buying situations. Because how I look at it is, if your growth depends on one winning campaign, you just have a temporary advantage. That's how the online advertising world works. And I would like to tell you a short story which will explain this point further. Once upon a time, there was a scientist who did research on bees, and he saw there is a beehive and there is a field where there are a lot of flowers. So the bees used to go there, pick up the nectar, come back and do their thing. But he saw almost 20% of the bees would just go not follow this particular path. And he was like, is there so much inefficiency in nature that 20% of the bees just wander right and left and they don't follow this path? In short, to his surprise, later what he realized is these bees actually go to explore new fields. What if there is a harvesting season and a farmer comes and just harvest the whole field, so the bees have nowhere to go? So these 20% keep exploring new fields. So if something like that happens, they have somewhere else to go. And that's all for this video. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one.